Greetings and salutations, my dearest friends. My name is Samantha, and today I'm going to be doing a recommendation video where I recommend a bunch of romances that feature polyamorous relationships. Hello, how are you? Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to Trope Week. This week I am posting a bunch of videos back to back where I pick a specific trope and I give you guys some book recommendations. And today I'm super excited because we're going to be talking about poly romances. I think I mentioned it on my channel, but this is one of my favorite tropes of all time. Top tier, chef's kiss. The golden trope, if you will. If you guys are unfamiliar on what a poly relationship is, it's basically a relationship that has more than two people. It could be 3, it could be 4, just more than 2 people. It's not to be confused with a menage romance. Nay, nay. A poly romance means that all of the characters are together. I guess what really makes it a polyamorous relationship is that all of the characters are together. It's not just them focused on like one person. It's a seamless combined relationship, and it's not a love triangle, so it's not like a character is gonna have to choose between one hero or heroine. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. That song is probably not appropriate for this type of video, but we're rolling with it. First started reading romance, I was always very drawn to like love triangles, but in these love triangles, in my head, I would always be like, oh, but this book would be so much better if they just all ended up together. Well, there are books like that, and once I discovered it, never going back. Like my shirt, this one says I like books and like 3 people, and I thought that was perfect. 3 people, because we're talking about romances with 3 people. No? Okay. I got this shirt from Hello Lovely, by the way. I will link it down below. I know I've been blabbing, but I wanted to describe my love for this trope. I'm very excited to film today, so let's get started. First recommendation is the tamest recommendation. There's not a lot of steam in this book, and I actually think this book is a young adult. So if you guys are kind of afraid to dabble in the world of polyamory, is that a word? I'm not sure. I would recommend Strange Grace by Tessa Gratton. I've talked about this book plenty on my channel because it's one of my all-time favorite books. Like, I would definitely place it in the top 5, maybe even the top 3. I love this book. Fantasy, so of course the names are hard to pronounce, except Arthur. Arthur is easy to pronounce. So we have a hero named Arthur, Ren or Rune, the jury's out on that one, and then Merwin. Why do they expect me to pronounce these names? Regardless, this town is very prosperous. They don't have a lot of sickness. Their crops are very plentiful. Outset, it looks like an amazing town because they are very prosperous. Well, the reason they're very prosperous is because years ago, a witch made a bargain with a devil in this devil's forest and basically agreed that every couple of years they would sacrifice a boy from their town in what they call a slaughter moon. Something goes wrong with the bargain, and every year the slaughter moon gets closer and closer. Speculation about what really happens and what is the real bargain all those years ago, and our 3 main characters are determined to find out what really happens. All have this really beautiful, seamless relationship. They're all tied to the magic in the woods. Very plot-heavy book. Like, it's a heavy fantasy book. I would highly recommend the audiobook because it was just so beautiful to listen to. All right, so that was our tame recommendation, and now we're going for the steam. This next book is hands down the steamiest and filthiest book I've ever read. It is Sugar Daddies by Jade West. And by the title, I feel like you can kind of get a feel for what this book is about. So our main character, Katie, she is low on some cash. She has some big dreams. She rides horses. No pun intended. To open up her own stable, and she just has really big dreams, but she's low on some cash. So she ends up seeing this ad of 2 older guys who make a lot of money, and they are looking for someone to be a partner in the relationship and be with the both of them at the same time. She agrees to it. She agrees to meet them, and once she meets them, she feels a chemistry to them and thinks this is something that she could really do. They form a relationship. It's pretty taboo. You will see why in the book. The hero actually ends up being her boss, and you get to see a lot of Katie's background. She's pretty estranged from her father, and there's a lot of like family drama that goes on in the book, but really the relationship is perfectly balanced, the three of them. Another one of my favorites, I feel like I'm gonna stop saying that because let's just say they're all my favorites, but another one I really want to talk about is Neighborly by Katrina Jackson. It follows Heaven and Calvin, who have been a couple for a while. Calvin is an aspiring boxer. I really love his character, and they decide that they're going to move in with each other. So they end up renting a sublet from another couple, so like they're neighbors, but their house connects and they share a backyard. This couple is married and they have an open relationship. So when Heaven meets the wife, they are instantly drawn to each other, and there is this instant connection and chemistry with one another. Obviously, the married couple is in an open relationship, so they're definitely open to doing something like that. And what I loved about Heaven and Calvin specifically is their relationship. The communication was so amazing, and they were just so strong and confident in themselves and who they were individually as well as their relationships. And they were just like, you know what? We're all attracted to each other. Let's just do it. End up forming like this open relationship, which I just loved reading about. Really though, the relationship was the strongest between the two girls, and then the two guys were just here for bringing their woman some happiness and pleasure. And I'm like, yes, we love open-minded, supportive couples. But if you like that book, Katrina Jackson has another book with a polyamorous relationship in it, and that is From Scratch. This is a first in a series. Sorry if I'm looking down, I'm just making sure that I'm getting everything correct. This is also available on Kindle Unlimited. Those Mary, Miguel, and Knox. Mary is a college professor, and she's just not really happy with her path in life. She ends up applying for tenure at her college and gets denied, and that is just her sign to pack up her stuff and leave and just do something wild for herself. So she ends up finding this really small town, finding some property that she can rent to open up her own bakery. She has a huge passion for cooking and really wants to open up her own bakery. She meets the local police officer and the local firefighter, who are old military friends, and instantly there is a connection there. Both guys are instantly drawn to her and they want to have a relationship with her. They kind of make a deal that the other person isn't going to get jealous, that they're just both gonna go for it and they'll let her choose. Well, Miss Mary decides that she doesn't want to choose, and why should she? She shouldn't have to. So she decides that she wants them both, and that's the romance, that's the relationship, and both of the guys are for it, they go for it, and I just love, again, the communication, the open-mindedness. I think it's available on Kindle Unlimited is a historical romance, and this is the only historical romance of the bunch. If you guys know any historical romances that are polyamorous, let a girl know. It's everything I want in a book, but there's just not that many. So this one is Heart in Hand by Rebel Carter. It is also a first in a series. It's called the Gold Sky series, and I know another book in this series has a polyamorous relationship, but I haven't read that one. I think it's the daughter of the people in this book. Anyways, this is a historical romance that takes place in America. Julie lives in New York, and she sees this ad of two cowboys wanting a mail order bride for both of them. They want to share this relationship, and this takes place in a small town. One of our heroes is a sheriff, and she decides that this is it for her. She decides to leave her family, pack up her stuff, and go be with these two guys, and it follows their romance. This book reads very much like a telenovela. It's very dramatic. It has a very typical villain. There's not much plot in the background. It just follows the romance between our three characters. It's not as steamy as some of the other ones, so if you're just getting into historical romances or poly romances, I think this is a great one. The next one is pretty steamy as well. I was listening to the Fated Mates podcast, one of my favorite podcasts ever, and they did a episode of menage or poly romances. They did it with Katie Roberts, who we will talk about in a second, and they mentioned this one, and immediately I was intrigued. So this one is called Apartment Threesome by Parker Hayes. By the title, you can just tell it's gonna be steamy. This follows Danica and Joy, who share an apartment, and their third roommate is actually moving out, so they need someone else to basically rent this room so they can afford rent. They end up putting out an ad and accepting it for a person named Alex, and they just assume that that's a girl, like Alexandra or something. No. It turns out that it is a guy, and a hot guy, in fact. And immediately, both of the roommates are like, oh, I like him. Also immediately attracted to the girls as well. And instead of the girls being jealous, they do the most logical thing, obviously. They decide they're gonna share him, because why not? They end up creating a schedule. I kid you not, this is the story, and I loved it. They end up creating a schedule like Monday, Danica's day, Tuesday, Joy's day, and then we're just gonna like switch off and have fun. Nobody's gonna get their feelings hurt, and it's gonna be great. And it was indeed great. Nobody got their feelings hurt. And what was beautiful is that in the mix of all of this, the girls discovered their attraction for each other. They were already friends, so they had that base friendship and trust with each other. And then they discovered that they were also really attracted to each other and wanted to be in a relationship with each other. And it just effortlessly turned into a polyamorous romance. Next one, I don't know if I would call this a polyamorous romance because oof, I don't want to do any spoilers, but it's not entirely polyamorous. It's more menage, and I will say a warning, it's very, very angsty. But I'm going to recommend it anyways because I enjoyed it. So it is Lovers by Fiona Cole. This is the second book in the Voyeur series. Is that how you pronounce that word? I don't know. I struggle to pronounce that word. This is a series, and I do recommend reading it in order, because if you read the books after this, it kind of ruins this book. So just make sure you read this book first or second. There's Jackson, Jake, and Karina. It's really Jackson's story though. So Jackson works for this club. Let me tell you about this club. My friend, let me tell you about this club. It's basically a club where people go and you can pay to watch people act out your favorite fantasy. Whatever the fantasy, whatever the kink is, you can pay some money and you can watch people act it out. But it's classy, you know? Bar, and then also it's these performers, and Jackson works at this place. He's a performer himself, but they're also opening up a second bar that he is going to be the owner of. They're hiring this marketing company to come help them with the bar, and the person who is the head of the marketing company is his old college friend, who they really didn't leave on the best terms. They kind of had like a very romantic, sexy night with each other, and then after that, our hero Jake just ditched Jackson. Jackson is bisexual, but Jake kind of struggled with his sexuality in this book and when they were in college, so he just stopped talking to Jackson. Jackson sees his old college friend, but he is engaged. So Jack is engaged to Karina, who is an old childhood friend of his and also works for this marketing company. It's kind of messy, and it kind of is. It's very angsty. Jack and Karina are engaged, and they have been wanting to spice up their relationship. So they decide to invite Jackson over and invite him into their relationship so that he can be more of like a hookup in their relationship, but it definitely develops into deeper feelings. I don't want to say too much about the book because I don't want to spoil the book, but the angst in this book is so real. It's so real. Quick read for me. Like, I literally read this in one sitting because I was addicted. But let me tell you, it's very angsty. Very angsty. Right. We cannot have a polyamorous romance video if I do not mention the queen, Katie Roberts. Katie Roberts has many polyamorous relationships, and she was like my introduction to them. I don't even know where to begin because she has so many. This is like her specialty. So honestly, just, you know, go on Goodreads, look up her name and pick which one sounds interesting to you. I've read everything that she's written, and I have enjoyed everything that she's written. So I'm going to talk about 3 of my favorites because this video would be really long if I talked about all of them. So my all-time favorite Katie Roberts is Learn My Lesson. This is part of the Wicked Villain series. This whole series is a twist on Disney fairy tales. It's basically focusing on our villains and like they're the heroes of the book. This book in particular, it is the romance between Hades, Meg, and Hercules. Hades owns this club called the Underworld. It's basically this BDSM club in the middle of very powerful cities. Hades has some beef with Hercules' dad, Zeus. So originally this starts as kind of like a revenge plot, but Hercules makes his way into Hades and Meg's relationship, and it's really beautiful. What I really like is her Bloodline Vampire series. I will say that these books end in cliffhangers. They end in cliffhangers, and I'm just like addicted to them. But just so you know, going into the book, the first 2 books are Sacrifice and Heir, and they follow vampires, obviously. Heroine is a half blood, but she hasn't shown many powers. So her dad is really just awful and ends up sacrificing her to a bloodthirsty vampire who is pure blood. There's not a lot of his kind, and her dad basically wants to control this vampire and have an alliance with him. So he decides he's going to sacrifice his daughter. Of course, there's a romance, but there's also 2 other vampires that kind of come in the mix. So it's 3 guys and 1 girl all in a relationship. It's wild. The plot is wild, but it's so good. And my other favorite one of Katie Roberts is her Sabine Valley series, which kind of ties into her Wicked Villain series. This one is Abel, and basically there's this town called Sabine Valley, and it is run by 3 factions, maybe 4 factions, I can't remember. But Abel was a prominent family in this town. There was a giant coup planned. His father and a lot of his family were pretty brutally murdered, and they were chased out of town. Abel is back with a vengeance because he feels like it is his birthright to own a part of this town. I don't really know how to describe this festival. It's kind of like a gladiator situation, like a fight to the death situation, where people can basically challenge others and they win prizes. So he decides that he is going to challenge 7 times. And I think it's 7. And his prize are brides. I know. Kind of sounds like a darker romance, but stay with me. He wins all battles because he is just that badass. And he picks 7 brides of all of the prominent families as basically a giant FU, huge revenge plot. And of course, for his bride, he decides to pick his old childhood friend that he feels betrayed him. So huge hate to love situation going on here. His old childhood friend is the leader of the faction that was supposed to be Abel's, and he's also married. So he ends up getting his old childhood best friend and his wife. 3 of them have this revenge, enemy, hate to lover situation going on. But it's so freaking angsty and so freaking good. I highly recommend it. So those were all of my recommendations, but I have 2 books that I wanted to include in this video. I haven't had time to read, but they're at like the tip top of my priority list. So let me talk about them. I'm gonna read the synopsis for Goodreads. The one that I'm reading right now is Harbor by Rebecca Weatherspoon. Everyone who has read this book tells me it is absolutely amazing. Heroine Brooklyn just lost her fiance, so she's grieving that, and she ends up meeting our heroes Chris and Vaughn, who were in a polyamorous relationship, but the 3rd person in their relationship also died and was also cheating on them with Brooklyn's fiance. Scandalous. All kind of grieving, and they're all kind of upset because their partners cheated on them, but somehow they find solace in each other. I'm not too sure anything else in the plot because, again, I just started this book. I know it has some BDSM overtones though. So I found this one on Kindle Unlimited, and it's called Fighting for 3 by Nicole Stewart. Heroine is a celebrity. She's a model turned actress, and she has quite a heavy fan base and has received some stalkers. So her and her husband decide that they're going to hire a bodyguard. They end up hiring Brendan, who is an MMA fighter and a personal trainer, and he kind of just comes in to make them feel a little bit safer. But of course, there's a romance. Again, I just saw this one on Kindle Unlimited and I was very intrigued. And now that I'm looking, Nicole Stewart has a lot of polyamorous romances. She has one called Heat for 3, Heat of the Night, Home for 3. Okay, this is a whole series. This is a whole series. I'm in it. I'm in it to win it. Can't wait to read this. If you've read any of her books, let me know. Okie dokie, those were all my recommendations and 2 books that are on my TBR and I'm very interested in reading. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoy polyamorous relationships like I do. They're just my favorite. I know some of these books were a little bit more steamy than my norm, than my usual. I try to keep it kind of like PG, PG-13, but baby, none of these books are like PG-13, so what can you do? Really enjoying filming all of these videos. I've been pre-filming them and we're coming to an end of Trope Week. I hope you guys have enjoyed the videos so far. And if you have any recommendations of your own, leave them down below. As always, thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. It means the world to me. I hope you guys are all staying happy and healthy, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!